What is your most traumatic experience with a teacher? My fourth grade teacher had a reputation for making one boy in her class an unpopular scapegoat each year. Lucky me. In previous years I'd been just another kid in the playground, but within 2 months the other kids wouldn't play with me during recess. One day I refused to go outside for recess. She asked why, and I foolishly told her that the other kids didn't like me. When they came back in, she marched me to the front of the class, and asked for a show of hands, who didn't like me. Fourth grade kids, mostly, did what fourth grade kids do. I broke down that night and told my mom what had happened and what had been going on all along. She marched into school the next day, got a meeting that included the principal, and tore the teacher a new asshole. I was still stuck in that class, but the teacher moved on to a new victim. Funny thing how self-esteem influences academic performance. My school used to give us a Stanford Binet IQ test every year. My score dropped 10 points from 3rd to 4th grade, then rose 20 points in 5th grade when I had a nurturing teacher. If you are still alive, fuck you, Mrs. Ericson. For an Ericson, she should really try to understand Ericson's theory of development. That would have reminded her that accomplishing things and receiving praise helps students grow. I was bullied really bad. Kids kept drawing awful ugly photos and leaving them on my desk with profanity towards my appearance. I had enough one day after dealing with a lot of abuse at home and the bullying at school, and when I saw another, broke down crying and brought it to my teacher. She just grabbed it, looked and asked if I wanted it back. Did nothing to help, wouldn't listen to me about the constant bullying, and did absolutely nothing. I was in 7th grade and still remember it to this day. Edit. Thanks for Silver Friend. Also thank to all who wished me well. Unfortunately no, I won't be doing anything towards the teacher, it was 12 years ago. I wish she learned better, but it was a small town school, and as sad as it is, that's just the way it was. I hope I can be a better teacher when I'm finished school. I'm so sorry. Fuck that teacher and fuck those bullies. Mine is more of a light-hearted traumatic. In 4th grade I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I had gotten the, at the time, new 3 Egyptian god cards. Well, I was caught playing with them during class and my teacher took them from me and threw them out. I was devastated after all the packs opened and cards traded to acquire them. I never forgave her. Did they ever end up being worth anything before all the reprint boxes? I would have loved to see her face if she found out they were worth some coin. Edit. The teacher was an older Southern lady in her 60s, so she was definitely in that mindset that she had 100% say in whatever she did with our personal belongings. Pretty sure if corporal punishment was still allowed I would have gotten the paddle on several occasions. I wasn't the only one who lost cards that day. Buddy who sat next to me had his Black Magician of Black Chaos and Blue Eyes Ultimate taken from him. This is like when Weevil threw Yuji's Exodia cards into the ocean. A very similar thing happened to me. We had to write a very short biography about a family member, so I chose my grandfather and focused in particular on his childhood in an obscure city called Stalingrad. Student teacher didn't like that one bit. Despite my very Russian name, and the fact that I could speak and write Russian, I was clearly only pretending to have had a Russian relative who was at the scene of one of the most significant battles of the Great Patriotic War. Didn't traumatize me personally, but I had a first-year lecturer in classics who went out of his way to terrorize the class. His first words to us were, "I suspect as many as half of you cannot read." He then administered a test, which 2/3 of the class failed. He was not shy about voicing his rather gleeful displeasure. I did well enough to avoid his wrath, and, annoyingly, get singled out for praise. He would routinely throw questions at students who weren't paying rigorous attention in a 3-hour lecture on Friday morning and then berate them for not knowing the answers. His comments on papers were beyond trenchant. "Are you illiterate? Do you imagine this makes sense? This is childish," etc. The unfortunate part is that he was a superb classicist. A close second was a novelist turned writing prof who hurled a girl's manuscript out of his office door, nearly hitting me in the hall as he shouted this. Is not writing. She came out to pick up her magnus opus moments later, weeping. Great writer, self-confessed shit teacher. I honestly don't understand why some people are so mean. What novel did the second dude write, if I can ask? Well, mine too, but unfortunately child porn and molesting a student. After the fact it was all pretty clear he only taught fun subjects. His room was full of games and candy. We were all welcome to eat lunch in his room and he often bought pizza for the kids there. I knew the kid and he went completely off the rails going into high school. Looking back now, I feel awful that I didn't catch the signs, or that anybody else didn't see it. Got accused of plagiarism over a paper I wrote, and didn't plagiarize, that I was really excited about because of how well I thought I did on it. Enthusiasm fully destroyed. I had a similar experience where my lit professor brought me in to tell me my paper was flagged by the software for being plagiarized from over 180 other student papers from around the country. Not websites, not public articles, student papers from other schools. Longest chain of plagiarized words was 6. I laughed because I thought she was pointing out how ridiculously sensitive the software was. She was offended that I laughed at her. I asked her if she really believed that I tracked down almost 200 students to steal 3-word phrases from them and stitch them together into a paper, which would take 50x the effort that it actually took to write it. Not in those exact words. I really thought I wrote a great paper. Got in a but I think it was because she felt dumb. Edit, spelling and claret. This sounds like a "this sounded better in my head" scenario. Was he like the Michael Scott type that tried to do good in an ass-backwards way? That's the only way I can think any of this is/was acceptable. ETA, I definitely don't agree with the behavior, just trying to paint a picture of the type of person this guy was. I'm a teacher, and I had a principal who made these kinds of faux pas all the time. He had aspiragus through the roof, and I knew he was trying to do the right thing and show he cared, but we lost a lot of families whose parents wouldn't put up with him. We were discussing Jean Vanier and Larchie. For context, Jean Vanier decided to invite 2 intellectually disabled men to live with him and started setting up homes for them so they wouldn't be in asylums. The teacher looked right at me, I'm disabled, and said, "Oh yeah, Vanier created those homes so you people wouldn't be bothering people because the handicapped don't function in society." My friend I left just to talk it out. He got fired a few years later because he did not have his license up to date. Cherry on top, his wife was the vice principal. I don't understand why any teacher thinks they have the right to regulate their students' bodily functions, and I am an 11-year veteran high school teacher. I get that some kids are just taking the hall pass to get out of class, blah blah, but as long as they're back in about 5 minutes or so, I don't care what they do. School schedule is set up to be so ridiculous. Of course they need a break. Hell, I didn't even have any latitude to write kids up for being out of class for 30 minutes, so I just had them sign in/out on a sheet before they left, so that when they were failing due to skipping class in the bathroom I could point to the senior sheet and say, "Look, I have been telling you all term that this kid is skipping class in the bathroom." Here is their own writing confirming this fact. Because, of course, in most other situations, them failing would be my fault. The girls in our elementary school were given proto-sex ed before the boys. The basic puberty stuff, your body is starting to change, you might develop breasts, sweating, all that stuff. They made a huge stupid deal about keeping it quiet. It's the girls' little secret. Don't go spreading it around school. It only occurs to me now that that is kinda dangerous in the wider scope of things. Anyway, my best friend was a boy and naturally, I skipped right off to tell him why suddenly half the class had an assembly all by themselves. My teacher heard about it, got me alone, grabbed me by both arms and shook me. "Keep your mouth shut." She was my favorite teacher up till then. Totally a great thing to teach a kid. We had those mats in my kindergarten class as well. I remember the first day of first grade and no nap time. I was so upset. I didn't want to go back to school. My friend is an elementary school teacher here in Germany. These kids come in used to nap times in kindergarten at age 6, and all of a sudden they're supposed to stay awake during a time they've been programmed to sleep at. She started nap times in her classroom and weans them off then during their first school year. She starts off with 5 naps a week, then goes to 4 and so on. Her classes are the most peaceful I know. Edit, to fix a typo. I was in the 4th grade. Found a dry erase marker on the playground. I wrote my initials on the tire swing. Classmate rats me out. I get yelled at for like 20 minutes straight about vandalism of school property. She starts going off about how it's the first step to becoming a criminal. Being a little kid, this scared the shit out of me. It was probably another 2 years before I believed that I wasn't going to become a criminal as an adult. You wrote something on a swing that could easily be erased? Yes, officer, this comment right here. /S. I would fidget, bounce my leg, chew on pencils, basically anything to give something for my mind to bounce back and forth to during class. It helped, but I'm sure, like you know, didn't work much. I remember getting up and down to sharpen my pencil, get water, or whatever during tests, and afterwards the teacher, would take me to the lower grade classes and have me sit with younger kids, since these will be your future classmates. Drove me crazy on the inside, as no matter how hard I tried I could not focus on a singular thing to save my life, so I began to lash out very passively. I can still remember always being in trouble and never really understanding why or how to be good. I knew I was smart, but I was only 50% smart, as the other 50% never kept my attention. It wasn't until 6th grade for me did a teacher recognize it and made it known I had an issue, and I was able to get help.